A cold winter wind swept through the streets of New York City. The year was 1906, and the city was in the middle of a gang war. This was no ordinary gang war. It was a war that would take over the streets and leave hundreds dead. A war between the Irish and the Italians. But what started as a fight over territory soon became a battle for supremacy. And when the dust settled, only one gang would be left standing. This is Street Wars, Part 2, Rise of the Mafia. Our story begins in Little Italy, New York City, where the winter wind could chill a man to the bone. Despite the biting cold, the streets were alive with activity. Men crowded around street vendors selling roasted chestnuts and steaming cups of coffee. Children bundled in heavy coats ran through the streets, their laughter echoing off the buildings. In the center of this bustling community stood the local saloon, a place where men went not just for drinks but for camaraderie and, most importantly, information. Inside, the dim oil lamplight revealed a rough-hewn interior. The air was thick with the smell of stale waste and stale beer. At a table in the corner sat two men, their faces etched with the hardships of their lives. One was Patrick, a wiry man with sharp features and a quick temper. He was a member of the notorious 5 Points gang, an Irish mob that ruled the streets with an iron fist. The other was Vincenzo, a stocky man with a close-cropped mustache. He was a soldier in the more recent Italian-American gang known as the Mafia. Patrick and Vincenzo had been brought together by a mutual friend. Their gangs had been in conflict for some time now, and their boss wanted to broker a peace deal. Neither of them wanted to be there, but they both knew it was necessary. They had fought too many battles, seen too many friends die. It was time for a change, or so they hoped. Over glasses of cheap whiskey, they discussed the possibility of an alliance, a way to put an end to the bloodshed. As the night wore on, they talked not just about the war, but about their lives, their dreams, their fears. By the end of the night, they had forged an unlikely friendship, one that went beyond their gang loyalties. But outside, the reality of their situation was far from friendly. The cold wind still blew, the threat of violence still hung heavy in the air. They had made a deal, but it was only the beginning. They had to convince their bosses, and that wouldn't be easy. Convincing their bosses proved to be a harder task than they had anticipated. Both Patrick's and Vincenzo's bosses were staunch traditionalists. They had been fighting for territory and power for years, and neither was willing to back down without a fight. Yet the lure of ending the costly gang war and seizing new opportunities proved too strong to resist. Slowly, reluctantly, the bosses agreed to meet. The meeting was tense. Old grudges and suspicions surfaced, making it clear that this wouldn't be an easy alliance. But Patrick and Vincenzo pressed their case, arguing that the benefits of unity outweighed the risks. Finally, the bosses agreed to a truce. It was a fragile peace held together by the hope of something better. The alliance between the Irish and Italian gangs sent shockwaves through the city. The 5 Points and the Mafia, once bitter rivals, were now partners. They stood side by side on street corners, patrolled the streets in groups, and defended their turf with a ferocity born of desperation. The other gangs, caught off guard by this sudden unity, were forced to scramble. As the new alliance grew stronger, it became clear that this was more than just a gang truce. This was the birth of a new criminal order. This alliance would go on to commit daring robberies, extort businesses, and control the lucrative alcohol trade during the era of Prohibition. They operated with a level of sophistication and efficiency that was unheard of in the world of organized crime. But this success came at a cost. The alliance forced its members to confront their deepest fears and prejudices. They had to learn to trust each other, to work together despite their differences. In doing so, they discovered a strength they never knew they had, a strength that would allow them to survive the treacherous world of organized crime. One fateful day, a rival gang decided to test the new alliance. They attacked one of the 5 Points liquor stores, hoping to cause some serious damage. What they didn't know was that they were walking into a trap. The store was being guarded by a group of Mafia soldiers who opened fire, sending the attackers fleeing. This incident was a turning point. It showed the other gangs that the alliance was real and that they weren't messing around. News of the attack spread like wildfire, reaching the ears of even the most powerful crime bosses in the city. Many were impressed, some were envious, but all respected the strength of the alliance. From that day forward, the alliance became a force to be reckoned with. They controlled vast networks of illegal activities, raking in huge profits and wielding immense power. But their rise to power did not come without challenges. Rival gangs plotted revenge. The police closed in, and the bosses grew increasingly ambitious. As the pressure mounted, the alliance was pushed to the brink. Members were arrested, killed, or forced to flee. The fragile peace between the Irish and Italians began to crack. Tensions were high, tempers were shorter, and the Allies found themselves facing a common enemy, the law. As the raids intensified, the alliance was forced to make a choice. They could either crumble under the pressure, or they could double down on their partnership. They chose the latter. They realized that their differences were less important than their shared struggle. So they redoubled their efforts, becoming more efficient, more ruthless, and more united than ever before. They moved their operations underground, implemented new security measures, and created a complex network of alliances and partnerships. As the years passed, the alliance became a legend, a whisper in the dark corners of the city, a name that struck fear into the hearts of their enemies. They became known as the Mafia, a term that originated in Italy and carried with it the weight of centuries of criminal tradition. Now the question is, why did they choose this name? Well, the answer lies in the history of the word itself. In Italy, mafia had been used for centuries to describe a secret society of criminals who operated outside the law. When they came to America, they brought that tradition with them. The name Mafia represented their heritage, their culture, their way of life. It was a way of saying, we may be outsiders, but we are strong, we are united, and we will not be controlled. As the years went by, the Mafia became a powerful force in the city, controlling vast networks of vice and crime. They operated with a level of sophistication and efficiency that was unmatched by any other gang. They had infiltrated every aspect of society, from the highest levels of government to the darkest depths of the underworld. They had become too big, too powerful to be ignored. But as their power grew, so did the scrutiny. The police were on their trail, determined to bring them down. Rival gangs sought revenge, and the public demanded justice. But the Mafia was prepared. It had foreseen the challenges that lay ahead and had taken steps to ensure their survival. They had established a strict code of conduct, one that emphasized loyalty, secrecy, and self-preservation. They had created a complex hierarchy, one that ensured continuity and stability. They had built a network of alliances and partnerships that spanned the globe. As the heat from the authorities intensified, the Mafia went into hiding. They abandoned their lavish lifestyles, disappearing into the shadows. They set up shop in hidden locations away from the prying eyes of the public and the reach of the police. There, they regrouped, devised new strategies, and waited for the storm to pass. In the meantime, the gang war raged on, claiming countless victims and leaving the city in chaos. But the Mafia remained hidden, biding their time, waiting for the moment to strike back. After years of hiding, when the heat had died down and the coast was clear, the Mafia resurfaced, more determined than ever to reclaim their power. They launched a series of audacious attacks, taking back their territory and eliminating their enemies. They proved that they were not only resilient, but also adaptable and resourceful. In the end, the Mafia emerged from the gang war stronger than ever before. They had proven that they could survive the worst that the city could throw at them, and they were ready to take their place at the top of the criminal food chain. So there you have it, the story of how the Mafia rose to power in the heart of New York City. If you want to hear more stories like this one, stay tuned. Until then, take care.